Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Homestead from Scratch show here with John Tejan and Logan Hyde, and I am Greg Dowd. And tonight we're going to be talking about preparing for spring, what you can do for yourself to prepare for spring. And I don't know, it's always getting some seeds started inside for us and then getting them ready to plant. I don't know. What do you got? You guys got a lot of stuff that you work on preparing up till spring. I guess you're preparing your garden beds and things like that.
Yeah, one of the I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about a lot of stuff because it could go on forever. But actually, just something that happened today. I was walking around because, as you noticed, the weather was really nice today. After having teens for a week or two, and finally getting some warmth out there and some sunshine was nice. But I planted and I got a garden bed off my back porch that I have roses in. They look really nice, and unfortunately, I kind of prepared the bed last year. I think it was last year or the year before. Planted the roses. They're growing good, but as in this part of the country, the worst thing for gardeners to deal with for me is Bermuda grass because it's like fire ants. You can put whatever you want on it, and shit's gonna come back. you can you can you can explode a nuclear bomb, and that stuff will survive. So, and it got out of control in my rose bed. So this time of year, everything's kind of died back. All the Bermuda is all yellow and brown, and the ground is really soft right now because of all the rain. And if it's a really well mulched bed, Bermuda grass, you can actually pull it out and pull all of the rhizomes out if the soil's loose enough. If the soil's dry, you're just asking to multiply your Bermuda grass, 10x if you start yanking it out in hard ground. So that got me thinking, and I'm almost to the point because it's kind of like you've got to get every last piece of it out before it's going to be Bermuda free. It's just going to grow back. The problem is that I shouldn't let it get as bad as it was. So I'm actually thinking, and I'm not much of a rose person, is to literally go in and, because this is the time of year you do it, is go ahead and dig those rose bushes out, set them aside, and go through and clean that bed out really good. Because if you're doing it while the rose bushes are in the ground, you're fighting around the thorns and the bushes and trying to get that Bermuda grass, and it's not fun to begin with, But I'm going, let's just yank these rose bushes out, clean the bed, and replant them, because at this time of year, it's not going to harm them. They're not growing. They're fully capable of being dug up and replanted with almost zero harm to the plant at this time of year. So that's kind of one of the chores I created for myself. And it's not food production. There's pollinator benefits to having, rose bushes and flowers and stuff. And that's why I have a lot of more than probably you see most people, but it's a good pollinator bed. But, it's something that Bermuda grass is just a maintenance nightmare, regardless of where you're trying to garden at. I don't know if you guys have any tips. I mean, you can use chemicals, which we try not to use. I mean, the minimal amount of chemicals possible, which is zero in most cases. But I have been known to try to get some Bermuda grass under control with Roundup every now and then, and it's like that stuff doesn't even work that well. It still comes back, right? So anybody out there that's listening and wants to jump in on the chat's got some tips on getting rid of Bermuda grass, I'm all ears. But that's kind of a year-round project to keep it out, because it does grow so aggressively in the summertime. It's literally the only thing. That and crabgrass is the only thing that grows in the summertime, and it does a great job. But that's kind of where I'm at right now, at least on that one topic. And I'll throw that to Logan and see what's going on in his spring prep, and if he's got any tips there.
Yeah, Bermuda grass is tough. The only ways that I've ever been able to handle it is either by physically removing it or smothering it. You can smother it. It's extremely difficult, though. You're talking about when
you got about a 12 or 18 month commitment to keeping that covered up. You ain't gonna be using that bed for a while because it's got to go through a whole life cycle.
When you smother it, you've got to don't think of inches of mulch, think of compost piles, and you can smother it out. It's just extremely difficult. And something that I've noticed, like when I do garden beds or anything like that, the chop and drop and mulching really helps. I mean, you got, like, if you were to manually remove them, you'd be doing work anyway. And so for me, it's a lot easier just to get in there and kind of basically mow everything down, just cut the tops off of them. And then anywhere where there's a lot of it, mulching it. You know what? The Bermuda grass a lot of times will come back out of that mulch and, be looking even healthier. But when I look at it, it's like, well, more food for the plants, and you cut it. And I've never known of any way just to like, oh yeah, this will eradicate it, and then you don't ever have to deal with Bermuda grass again.
Yeah, because I've put down, I've tarped some areas, or I've used some black landscape fabric in between rows or in rows, and it keeps the Bermuda grass from growing up into your tomatoes or whatever you're growing. But at the end of the season, you pull that tarp back and you've got a 20-foot long runner of Bermuda grass that's white, and it's just looking for one ray of sunshine to just bolt through. I mean, it is so aggressive. It'll grow through concrete, I'd swear, if you gave it a little sunlight. It's ridiculous.
Oh, it will. It'll grow in the cracks of concrete for sure.
So it's just the bane of my existence in this part of the country, and I don't think anybody has a great solution. But I think the mulching part is what I'm going to concentrate with that rose bed when I do get it cleaned out. And I mean, I've probably got about an inch or two maybe of mulch, but even more would be better. That stuff does compress down and gets thin pretty fast. I mean, you got to put it on more than once a year,
As far as for my customers that I do some landscaping for, I always recommend to them, they'll want to put down like an inch of mulch. And I'm telling them, I'm like, look, you want me to come back next week?
Yeah.
So it's like, bare minimum 3 inches of mulch on everything. And that's, real bare minimum. And that's still, doing it once or twice a year. But the mulch really seems, to me, it takes out a lot of, how should I put it? I know I can't remember when we were talking about this, but we were talking about like the, everything being passive on the homestead, people wanting to automate stuff, but like there's still always work. I think it's one of the most efficient ways of gardening. I know, and it's documented on my channel. We did a garden bed this past year, and we kind of basically threw out stuff and was like, all right, screw you plants. Y'all got to, do it yourself. And the chickens cleaned up what we didn't eat. And we realized real quick that some of the things you can always count on, even if you neglect them, really is zucchinis and cherry tomatoes. So if you like either one of those and you live in North Alabama, you can pretty much just grow them anywhere. You could probably sow them into your lawn and not mow a certain area, and they probably just grow and live with the grass. But finding stuff like that to grow, and that's one of the reasons too I like to stick to heavy animal systems, just because, for example, I know we talk about cattle on here a lot because of John, but with a cow, I mean, they can eat freaking grass. They can eat that Bermuda, and then you can eat it as a steak. Yes. That's a pretty good trade-off.
Yep. Yeah, and I actually have noticed in my pasture that if I have a bare spot or something, it's going to be covered. The Bermuda's going to cover it pretty fast if you've got in bare spots. But there's parts of my pasture there's no Bermuda, and I think the best advice I got for at least pasture management with weeds is you can't, especially if you don't want to use any sort of chemical, right? Is the best way to get rid of these weeds is outcompete them. It's through competition of other viable grasses that you want to grow, and keep them healthy, and they will outcompete. Because one of the best ways, not one of the best ways, but probably one of the more convenient ways to defeat Bermuda grass is it doesn't grow very well in the shade. It seeks out sunlight aggressively. And if you can keep a pretty heavy canopy on your pasture or yard or wherever, it's not going to be as aggressive as like a bare spot in your yard, and it's going to cover it in a month, and you're like, where'd that come from? Well, that's Bermuda grass, but there's no competition for it there, and that's why it doesn't take over everybody's yard if it's a healthy yard. Well, Logan, you're more into the lawn maintenance side of things, but that's always one thing I also learned, if we're talking just in your lawn. And Logan, I think we might have talked about this, but cutting your grass as high as you possibly can manage it and still look good is probably where you should be, because that sets up the environment for competition, right? All the other grass is shading out, because Bermuda grass grows really close to the ground. It just goes right along the top of the ground. It doesn't go up very high unless when it's putting out seeds, the only time it does that. So if you've got something that grows fairly high and can shade it out, you can reduce its impact. You're not going to completely get, but even when I was a kid, maybe you guys did this too, and your dad told you to go out and cut the grass, in the springtime. It's like, he always set that mower down on the lowest setting and go scalp the yard, and you're like, well, that's what we do, It's like, there may be some reasons why you'd want to do that, but that kind of plays into the hand of Bermuda, right? It's like, okay, thanks for knocking out all my competition. I'm just going to take off now. But I don't know, Logan, we're talking a lot about Bermuda grass, but it is a spring prep, and these are just strategies. These are just strategies that you can use if you're battling with that, in your garden, in your yard, whatever, just know what it's good at and what it's not good at, and try to take advantage of the natural way you can outcompete, right?
Speaking of animal systems that you brought up, Logan, that I lost a bunch of my chickens to predators. So this season we're changing up. We're going to do the charger that you can plug into the AC charger that's going to hit a lot harder and consistently. John, I think he recommended one for me to go look at a while ago. So that's going to be the strategy. We were using one of these little solar guys from Premier One with their electric netting, and I guess what happens is the battery gets weaker over time, and if you don't have it set up and grounded well, then the electric is not gonna hit it very hard with that little portable solar electrifier. And so yeah, we're gonna change that out, and I think we may have a line on somebody that might be able to get us some chickens that are already laying, some hens that we might be able to get for free, apparently. I don't know. That's what I was told, but we'll see if that pans out. But yeah, getting some chickens back, and with the price of eggs now, it's and then taking out all these chickens and other animals and stuff around from what I'm hearing. Want to get back out there.
Yeah, well, be in my business and have to go out and buy some cattle, they're astronomically expensive right now. I mean, I'm just like from 2 years ago, the price per pound is 50% increase. What was $2 a pound is now you're paying $3 a pound. And and there's ways I can manage through that. That just means I have to have my customers share the cost of that, and that's never a fun thing to do, but yeah, the price of animals is ridiculous. It's getting, the inflation is finally getting around to the animals, right? Although the chickens, they're just killing those because of the bird flu, but they're we can discuss that maybe, but I don't really care to, because they're just killing hundreds of millions of birds, and it don't matter. They're like, kill wild birds too, they're all carriers of this thing, and it's like, we've been through this rodeo before, man, and I'm not a big fan of all that kind of stuff. And
that sounds like more of an excuse to be able.
Well, it also plays into the hand of the small homesteader who, is pretty isolated from those commercial hatcheries that are killing off all of their birds. The government's telling them to. I don't get too much into it, but yeah, that's when you're in the commercial business, you don't have a whole lot of choice. So yeah, that kind of sucks. But one tip, Greg, that I've used for my chickens is you need to make friends with the local crow population, because crows will protect your birds. They will run off, because if you give them a reliable food supply, and that's how you befriend a crow, they like peanuts, shell in the shell, and they if you feed them, they're really intelligent, and they'll know to protect everything on your property, and they'll gang up on anything, and I've seen it. I'm like, there'll be a hawk up there flying over my farm, and then here comes like 2 or 3 crows running them off, and it's like, wow, I didn't know they did that, but they do. They're I know there's a lot of superstition behind crows, but they're super smart. You don't want to make them your enemy, that's for sure. And I know I'm applying a lot of human intelligence to them, but they're that smart. It's like they know who screwed with them and who feeds them.
Their intelligence is supposed to be comparable to a 7-year-old child, right? Is what I've heard their intelligence being. I tell you one thing, I was talking about going to all Rhode Island Reds this year, and one of my buddies, that me and him, when we were teenagers, we used to go to all the chicken shows and stuff. We were into like the Bantams and everything, so we were big into chickens for a very long time. And he said, "You don't want to get you any black Australorp or anything like that?" And I was like, I'd seen some people saying that having black Australorps keeps hawks away. And he said, "Well, you know why, don't you?" I said, "No." And he said, "Well, they think they're crows." Mm-hmm. And I, in my mind, I'm like, that is so silly. And I'm like, but it makes perfect sense. Yep. So the hawks, stay away. If you've got some black chickens, that might be something too, is just to throw in some black chickens and do like John said, especially if it's coons or anything like that. You might get some peanuts and see if you can't get a crow mafia. Fun fact, a group of crows is actually called a murder of crows. So yeah, maybe they'll murder up on some of your predators.
And you go, it seems hard to, hard to understand. Oh, well, they're not going to get fooled by a black chicken, will. I mean, people put up scarecrows and they get fooled by those too, even though it's a pair of overalls with some hay stuffed in it, and a hat thrown on top. But
These hawks sounds like they're racist.
Yeah, I think they probably are. They don't identify well with the crow. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, they're natural and that's kind of what we're all about, right? We want to use the most natural way to solve problems, and that's all it is solving problems. And so it's always good to know that there are ways of doing it now.
I like that. I'll try that. Yeah.
Yeah, and just not really a feeder, but keep them, if you've got like something where you can elevate it so the squirrels and everything else don't have a party on your peanuts. But just be aware of the crows, or just on the lookout for them in your area, and kind of see where they're at. And they'll figure it out pretty quick, because like we said, they're pretty smart. And I'm thankful for the crows I have, and I can always have more.
There was actually a guy, I think he was from New York City, had trained some crows to trade little seeds for coins. And if they bring like quarters, he'd give them a little bit of extra seed. And he had like a whole business going. And like the crows were just bringing him. Well, I mean, you think about it now, you couldn't have 100 people in New York City doing that. But if you had just one guy, like, that's actually a viable business. I mean, you think about how much change is strewn all over New York City. And if you're just giving like a couple of seeds, you probably got a couple of cents into every crow per day, and you're making, probably a few $100s worth of, just coins constantly coming in. And not to mention, if somebody got lost, like, a wedding ring or something, I mean,
I train them on bills. That probably a little more efficient. I don't need that nickel. I need that dollar bill.
Get the crows to recognize Benjamin Franklin, and then just be like, then you break out the peanuts for them.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw a video of one that a crow was trying to get. It was a real tall, I think, like glass that had water in the bottom, and it figured out. It just went out and got rocks and kept filling rocks up till the water level came up to where it could drink it. It's like it's smart enough to understand displacement theory.
Clever girl. Clever girl.
Good stuff. But yeah, crows might be on my list for spring prep too. I've always wanted to befriend crows, but yeah, that's just a whole nother thing there. We've got, actually, as far as birds goes, we've got a Muscovy duck sitting on some eggs and some chicken eggs too. And I talked to my wife about it. I said, looks like you and the girls may be keeping some chickens, because the duck, her biological clock tells her that after 35 days, her eggs are ready to hatch. If all the chickens hatch, which will be 2 weeks earlier, they hatch in 21 days, she may get up off the nest and abandon the other eggs. And I don't want her to do that. So as soon as those baby chicks start hatching, as soon as they're dry enough, we're going to snatch them out from under her. I think she had about 8 viable eggs underneath her, which is really weird because we got rid of all our roosters, but I had looked at the dates of when we got rid of all the roosters and when she probably started sitting, and a hen will hold on to a rooster's sperm for 2 to 3 weeks. And so we were right there in that window. I said, so there's a chance. And sure enough, they're all fertile, and we're going to be having some baby chicks in the middle of February, probably, or beginning, because all those eggs look really full. But yeah, spring prep, we're looking at doing some garden beds a little bit more this time. Not too much though, just because the homestead animals just make so much more sense to us. Gardens, especially if you try to do it in a more of a conventional way, can be a little labor intensive, and so we're still going to be leaning more towards the animals, but getting ready to plan a lot of stuff, because we're going to be doing, of course, some garden stuff, planting a lot of trees, getting ready for spring. Got to do a lot of tree planting and just a lot of planning too. I don't think that we can ever fully take advantage of the time we have during the winter when stuff kind of slows down to really plan out what's happening the next year. Because you've got time, but at the same time, spring's just around the corner. I mean, for us here, probably beginning of April, everything's booming. Grass is growing, birds are making babies, and it catches up to you pretty quick. But we've been doing a lot of planning about what's going to happen in the next year, and winter is a great time. There's plenty of stuff to do in the winter. I mean, there's mulching. There's just like with the trees, we've got to do a lot of digging trees up and healing them in. And it just tons of work, but there's also enough time that you're not just so run down that you can, do some planning for the next year. And so I like to take a lot of time to just kind of figure out what it is that we're going to do and list of priorities, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think one of the things that always gets me if I don't plan, which I could always do a better job of, is timing is almost everything for me, especially when it comes to, say, the cattle side of it, because, if you're need some bush hogging done, which it's normally needs to happen at the end of spring before summer starts to kind of cut everything back. It's still growing, but you want to keep the seed heads off. At least that was my strategy last year. But you know what? I don't have a bush hog, so I have to hire people to come to do that. And it's like every year is like I need it done, and I'm pretty specific about the time, like the first week in June. I need that because the seed heads on the grass are right at the point you want to cut them off, and it's critical to do it the right time. And it's like, yeah, okay, I'll call them a couple weeks ahead of time, and then guess what? These people that do bush hogging, most of them are in the hay business too, and they're bringing in hay, and it starts raining, and they can't get out to cut hay, and if they can't get out to cut hay, they ain't coming out to bush hog you. So it's like you get pushed to the end of the line because hay's where they make their money, right? Bush hogging's just where they get a little extra money, and it's like that's the busiest time of the year for guys that run those machines because they're cutting hay and baling hay and hauling hay off. And it's like, it almost makes me want to buy a tractor and just do it myself. So I'm going to...
Wonderful excuse to get a tractor.
Yes, great excuse.
Wonderful excuse.
These guys never show up on time, and I can only depend on myself. There you go. That's a good reason to spend $35,000, or whatever.
The wife will love it.
Yes. But this year I'm going to do something different. I'm not bush hogging this year. I'm just going to let it go 100% natural pasture. And, the cows will figure it out. There's a lot of, fear for cattle producers of leaving those seed heads on there and having really long grass because there's some thought that it causes pink eye. That that long grass gets in their face and maybe scratches their eye and opens them up to infection. And it's like, you know what? And I did a little research on that, and it's that's not really how pink eye spreads. It's an infection. It's like pink eye. It is what it is, right? It's an infectious disease. They get it from other animals normally. Mm-hmm. And so my herds never had pink eye. None of my cows have ever had pink eye. Now I get new cattle every year, and they might have it latently in their system. But I'm gonna trust that the cattle that I have are healthy and they don't carry pink eye. I'm gonna run it through without bush hogging this year. It's gonna save me a little bit of money. It's actually gonna provide more. Well, the research isn't in yet whether I have more or less fodder at the end of the year by not cutting it or cutting it, and see how the grass does by not cutting it. There's a couple schools of thought on that. So this is a kind of an experiment, just let it go and see what happens. And
you don't want to get out there with your scythe and scythe 30 acres worth of grass?
No. And I actually broke the blade on my scythe. I cracked it, and
oh crap!
I was going after some really heavy brush, and it was a brush blade, but it cracked it, and I'm like, oh geez, because I do use it to clean up certain areas, right? And it works really well, but you're not going to want to do more than a little bit,
Yeah.
An acre will take you, and this is if you're in good shape and you know how to use a scythe. It'll take you a day or two to do an acre. It's not easy. It's a lot of work, and that's just getting too old for that shit to coin a phrase. So we're gonna use the stun method with the pasture this year, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got to plant some trees this year as well. I'm not exactly sure. I've used a couple methods of planting them. My problem isn't planting. It's like, how do I manage the grass around where I'm planting these trees? Because it's like, you plant 100 trees, that, you got to get a weed eater out there. That's a lot of work, man.
Mm-hmm.
Do you put down landscape fabric and plant through that? It keeps the competition away from the bottom of the tree. Do you just, which I don't recommend, is, or just blast the whole row with Roundup before you put the trees in, or the stun method, just stick it in the ground and see what happens, So there's a couple methods I'm going to try. I'm just going to mow it real short and plan into it and try to keep it as trimmed up as possible, because normally you'd let the cows eat and trim it up for you, but unfortunately they like those little tender trees seedlings as well, so that kind of doesn't work out really well that way. So you got to keep them fairly isolated, which means the grass is going to grow up around them. So I don't know, Logan, do you have a suggestion on, I got to plant, say, 50 trees in a row, how would you prep that row, and say that row's 100 feet,
How, what kind of trees are you planting?
Well, I'm going to be planting the hybrid poplars grow fast enough. They'll grow past their competition. Yeah. I got a couple black locusts that did pretty good. Now they got thorns on them, but the deer still got to a couple of them this past year. And I'm going to try some willows as well.
Well, with the willows in particular, I have not tried this with the hybrid poplar, but it would probably work. With the willows, for the most part, they can take you'll plant a tree and they'll tell you not to put mulch all the way up to the trunk, which is good advice. That's the majority of your trees. You don't want to do that. One thing about willow is you can pile that stuff up there and it'll just send out roots from the trunk. So with a lot of willows, I just say mulch the fire out of it, throw cow patties on it. It don't matter. You can just pile it up on them and they're good. They love it. But one of the things I've noticed, if you're doing like a row, I would say keep it just to where you could mow on either side of the row. And in the middle, I honestly wouldn't worry about it until like end of year cleanup. Now it's not going to look pretty. If you've got the wife going hey, that crap that you planted in the backyard, I'm getting sick of that. Will you go out there and fix that? If it's that, don't do what I'm advising you to do. But if you can leave it to its own devices, I'd say throw a couple of fences up, to protect your trees, plant them all in a row. And most of those trees are going to outgrow any grass competition. Yeah. As far as, they just need to get up above it to be able to get some sunlight. That's all they need. Right. And if you get your cuttings from me, I can hook you up with some longer cuttings too, where they're already a little bit higher than what they normally would be.
Gotcha.
But the easiest thing with that many trees is just to let it go, and then when fall comes around, lay that grass down. You just basically crimp it and then throw mulch on top of it, and that's about the easiest way, because keeping up around a bunch of trees is a lot of work. Yeah. It's a whole lot of work unless you've got the mulch to begin with to really smother everything out, which I've done. There's a place where I planted about, I'd say, 200 willows, all on 6-inch centers. And I went in and threw down some cardboard, some rabbit manure, which cardboard was only on part of it, rabbit manure over the whole thing. And then I threw just tons and tons of leaves and planted directly into that with my cuttings. And for the most part, it has a few places where our best friend Bermuda was growing. But other than that, no problem whatsoever. The heavy mulch, or just leaving it to where, it can do its own thing. If you don't do that, pretty much, unless, of course, you could use landscape fabric. Yeah. The only thing about landscape fabric is a lot of times it's got its own issues. Eventually grass grows through it, and then it's a mess to clean up. And sometimes it can interfere with water penetration and stuff like that. But I'd either go, if you can get a hold of enough mulch right now, like if anybody's mulching trees, or if you can get up enough cow patties or some old hay or something to be able to pile up in that row, get you a nice row, and even tarp it beforehand, which now it's kind of late to be doing that. But
I think that's probably what I'm going to do next year, and I'll probably start in the fall. I'll probably throw the tarp on what I'm going to plant, the area I'm going to plant the next spring, and then pull the tarp off. It'll have knocked everything back far enough, like you said, that it won't compete with that seedling enough to really impact it, at least not in the first part of the year. And hopefully it's gotten established enough after that, it'll just take off. Especially like a poplar, those things grow, feet and feet a year, they'll jump up quick, so you don't have to worry about it. And willows are pretty fast growing too. So,
the two I've got, they average about 12 feet a year in vertical growth. And after about their third year, they'll slow down a little bit on the vertical growth. They've got more, they'll branch out more.
And they'll thicken up their trunk.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good.
Have you guys ever tried that, Logan? Have you ever tried that for a new garden bed? Is to tarp an area and then just remove the tarp and then just plant directly into that without doing any kind of tilling or anything like that? Have you ever tried that before?
I've done it once with the tarp method, but I want to say I put mulch on top of it too. I'm just mulch. And now when I say mulch, that is a very broad term. I'm not talking about just wood chips. I mulch with wood shavings. I've mulched with wood chips. I've mulched with leaves, any kind of manure mixed in with that. I've mulched a little bit too with aquatic plants. And mulch just... It feeds the soil so much more than just, tarping stuff and then taking it off and planting directly into that. Now, I've, done some places. I've even done, conventional gardening. That's what I used to do growing up was, you get out there and you till, and, then you'd have to till again, of course, when weeds got too bad, and hoe around stuff, and you kept everything real pristine. Just, mulch. I've noticed that some of the people that I used to, I still listen to, but used to use the tarp method, they've kind of started to steer away from it for, whatever reasons. I still think it's a good idea, especially if you've got a, Nuka area where you've got a bunch of Bermuda grass and stuff. Man, a tarp does work really well.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've never tried it before.
Yeah, so. I used it in my orchard when my orchard was like super young. Like I had planted it like the year before, and there are apple trees that were maybe 3 feet tall. There wasn't any canopy, so I just repurposed the rows in between the trees, and I tarped it, and but I just kept the tarp on, and because there's so much Bermuda out there, I didn't want to deal with it. I planted a bunch of pumpkins and watermelons and let them fill in between the rows of the. Hell, they'll even climb up trees. They'll use that as a trellis. But first year I had a bumper crop. But unfortunately the ground really, I didn't put mulch down or anything. I just wanted to kill back the grass, and I did plant the pumpkins and the watermelon in hills, and that's the only fertility I added was that hill that I planted them in. I didn't cover the whole, because you don't need to with watermelons and pumpkins. I mean, they grow from one area and they just spread out. They don't continually put roots down every year, so they only draw the nutrients from that one spot. But I noticed a severe decline the second year because it sucked a lot of fertility out of the ground. Those are really, they'll really pull the juice out of your ground, especially if you're not going back. Because I didn't use any fertilizer or Miracle Grow. I just let it go, and they were doing so well. I'm like, I think I figured this gardening thing out, and then went back the second year, and it's like, the productivity was like less than 50% of the first year. It just dropped way off. And it may have been the weather too, but it definitely was not as vibrant a growth the second year, because I didn't really do anything to the ground, right? I just thought I'd figured out, the Rubik's Cube there, but I was just fooling myself. And I think I'm going to try that pumpkin thing again though. Because I've talked about this before. It's like, I'm thinking about raising some hogs, and pumpkins are real easy to grow, and you get a lot of pumpkins, and that's a lot of hog food. That is a ton of hog food, and that's good food for them too.
Good dewormer.
Yeah, and so it's like cheap food to feed your hogs, along with, the fruit off the persimmons and the apples and the plums or whatever, that's where they work really well for cleaning up, orchards and gardens and stuff. Chickens do an okay job too, but there's only so much chickens can do. They can't eat a whole pumpkin. They can try, but when you got 30 or 40 of them sitting out of there, they kind of don't quite get to all of them.
I ran across something recently on my Twitter feed on one of the creators I follow, and he was talking about how everybody has the argument, especially over the immigration, I guess, is that like who's gonna pick all the food or whatever. And she shared this tweet I thought was pretty hilarious. And see what you guys think about this. He said, white people have been paying to go pick their own apples and berries on farms for years. Who's going to pick the crops, you ask? Give us a cute basket, some areas to pick, and charge us admission. We'll do it.
That's true. That is very true.
Well, my wife's not white, but that sounds like something she'd want to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
what we're not thinking. We got to think a little.
Well, and look, like for
we got to cater
for me, like personally, here in my area where I'm at, like the majority of Hispanic, which we've got a lot of Mexicans here. They're not doing any of the like there's no picking fruit or whatever. Now they do work in like the chicken houses and stuff, but the majority of them, do the chips and salsa. And as soon as people, like, even if there's people that are like, I can't stand these people or whatever, we got to send them back or whatever. As soon as they realize chips and salsa's gone, their little tune will change. They're like, wait a minute, you mean they're taking the chips and salsa with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
agritourism, I think, is something to really think about. Pointing that out, I think.
Well,
we all kind of laugh because I think it's true. Yeah.
It blows my mind because, we've thought about a lot of stuff we could do for entertainment. That's the thing is people will spend money on entertainment. Because, really, and I'm not saying that as like a stab at people, like, people blowing their money on this type of stuff. But, you're supposed to enjoy life. And so there's a lot of people that they necessarily don't want to do homesteading, but they want to have the homesteading type experience without all the work. And so, having an option for people to get close to their food and everything, I think is an awesome thing. And there's probably a lot of Karen type individuals that I wouldn't want to deal with in some of that stuff. But like for the most part, I think it's awesome to get out and do that type of stuff. But yeah, you just got to get, I don't know if we have enough Karen. Well, we've got a lot of Karens in this country. I know we got enough Karens to pick all the food, but
well, yeah, but that's a great idea because, you're just kind of, it's kind of like, if you got a kid that you want them to do a chore or something, it's like, just make a game out of it. They understand that. Just like other people, it's like, it's really cool, man, to go out and pick your own stuff, get a couple social media influencers. And it's like, yeah, this is like the coolest thing ever. And pretty soon people are beating down your door to pick your asparagus, which, by the way, I knew a Mexican when I lived in Texas. He was retired out of the military, but he grew up down in the Rio Grande Valley. And he's like, there's nothing more backbreaking than harvesting asparagus. Because it's only like 6 inches off the ground. And there's like, they really don't have machines that can do it. You got things that can pick just about any kind of berry and any kind of fruit tree, but it's like asparagus, you got to have that knife and get down there on the ground and cut it off and bundle it up. He goes, that is some of the most backbreaking work you'll ever do, and it's like, yeah, get these people to go out and cut your asparagus for you, man, because that's I don't think you can you grow asparagus in this part of the country?
I do think that there's a great opportunity here because of like you could almost sell it as like a health retreat kind of thing, Go on your health retreat, get into nature, get some good sunlight, detox,
get a drum circle going,
get detox from the city a little bit from all the electronic EMS.
Get it. I missed that one. What circle?
Get a drum circle going.
Drum circle, heck yeah. Heck yeah.
Dancing naked in the moonlight, all that other good stuff.
Later we'll have a bonfire.
Yeah, if I do that as a business, all the men are forbidden from getting naked. They're all forbidden.
Yeah. You have to shut her down.
Dude, pull like a Leonardo DiCaprio, be like, you must be between these two ages and female to fully participate at this farm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he likes them in about the 25.
Something like that. They get 25, and then he ousts them. Yeah, either that or call it Diddy's Ranch or something. I don't know. There would be the weirdos that would be like, oh, Diddy's Ranch, what kind of new adventure would this be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agro-tourism.
Something to think about for homesteaders.
Yeah, I think it's a really big one. Too, just having people come out and to the farm where they're buying their food. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, hey, here's what we offer as a package or whatever. You come on the health retreat, which I think is a great idea too. But then if you're just wanting to grow food and sell good food to people, having that experience where you come and you tour the farm and you can know the farmer, etc., I think is a really good business model, because then the people in their minds, they're like, well, we're getting this experience for free.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just wrapped into the cost of the food.
Yeah. And you can even, and if they really are wanting to learn, past what you offer them there, you just might find you some free intern labor,
Yeah.
You want to actually start working with these cattle, come on out. 7 o'clock in the morning, I move them every morning. Come on, and if that's what you feel comfortable doing, I mean, some people, I mean, I know I had to learn by myself, but I kind of, that was okay with me. But some people, they're afraid to do anything, and they need somebody to hold their hand, which is fine. That's, I'd actually like to do that, with my farm eventually, because that's some good opportunities for people.
Well, and that goes back to what you were saying, Greg, about like the retreat or whatever. If you've got a whole lot of hand holding, I think probably what Greg said as far as the model is probably the best one, just because people, I think it was, I was reading in one of Joel Salatin's books that he was talking about how they used to have it to where people would want to come out and they'd want to spend just a day. They're like, oh, I can pull my weight and everything. And he said that, that turned out to be like not true because, for one, they've got all the questions. They feel, they need their questions answered. And then they're slow. There's a lot of stuff they don't know how to do. And so it ends up taking you longer. And so then they decided, well, we'll charge $1,000 a day. And they were like, it's not worth it. So, you can, if you plan right and you have like the little retreat deal, it's like do stuff, for example, gathering eggs from the hen house, in the morning. That's something that everybody takes out a little carton. They fill up the carton. You ain't got to worry about them breaking a whole bunch of eggs because all they're going to do is get a carton's worth. And you set a price on that stuff. And, you say, like, oh, we provide lunch and supper and you're going to go out and do this. And then you go out and you fish in the ponds or whatever it may be. But you kind of keep them separated from the work day.
Right. So they don't get in the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because when he said they charge like $1,000 a day, I was like, dang, that's a lot of money. But he said it still wasn't worth it because the people would just like because they were paying a premium, they felt like they were entitled to like the whole day is basically a consultation, which is fine, but it set them back so far that they just said, we just couldn't do it anymore. Right. And so, getting that business model, or if you get an intern, getting a good intern and having somebody that's, got a little bit of sense to them. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities in that. And we've talked about it some, and it's just, one of those things that'll be at a future time, but there's a huge market for it because there's a lot of people that want to get out. They want to do something different. I mean, something that and I know we kind of got off of the spring prep, but one of the things that just blows my mind, it's like, if you think about the main entertainment things that there are to do, at least around here, I know in bigger cities, you're going to have more options and stuff. But if you're in a rural area or if you're in a, town or city that's not that big, the majority of things that you can do is there's the movies, which that's really going out of style with, all the streaming services. You can go shopping, and some people still like to do that, or you can go out to eat. And then, of course, there's little things like you might have a skate rink, you might have a bowling alley, but there's not a whole lot of variety and entertainment. And I think people are getting really sick of just the same old. And so doing stuff on the homestead, on the farm, I think is a huge opportunity for people to make some serious dough in the entertainment business.
Yeah, I've always thought that one of the better untapped markets for doing that are homeschool groups, right?
Yes,
because they're always looking for activities for their students to be, to get exposure to the real world, and that's a perfect one because it's how many kids, the problem is I'm living in Giles County and, most of the kids around here are, rural kids anyway, and they kind of know what goes on the farm. Whereas city kids, they're just like, where's the black cow that gives the chocolate milk?
Yeah.
you know, and that's where you can really have some impact and see their eyes light up when they figure out that, you know, that's where a chicken egg comes from. It's like, really?
Yeah. I'd tell that kid, I'd say, hey kid, don't be a bigot. Black cows produce white milk too.
That's right. Yeah, I just think that's a group of people that's just ready to be, you know, set loose in that atmosphere because, you know, I don't know that many homeschoolers, but I do know that by virtue of them being homeschoolers, unless they're just absolutely worthless people and can't figure out how to get their kids to school. So, you know, but they're concerned about the education of their children. You know, that's usually a fairly safe assumption with a homeschool group. And that, you know, if that is, and you're teaching skills and you're imbuing them with knowledge that is practical and real in the real world. Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost a no-brainer.
Yeah, we're going to be homeschooling both of ours, and I joined up in a homeschooling group that's local here, and I'm just amazed at how big it was. Because I mean, I was homeschooled, never set foot in a public school, and it was not popular back when I was homeschooled. There was a lot. I mean, it was very kind of fringe, you know, population of people that did that, and a lot of times too.
Here's your diploma and your tinfoil hat, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, mine was kind of on the diploma and tinfoil hat side, for sure. But you know, most of them, when you think of homeschoolers, it would either be like hippies or you know, this is not attacking anybody's religious beliefs, but, you know, it'd be like blue jean skirts. You know, I mean, you had one of the two. They either wore a blue jean skirt or a flower skirt. And those were the homeschoolers. But, you know, you had people that were what we would say normal. And, you know, everybody was like, oh, golly, why would you want to homeschool your children? And, yeah, ours was just more of a, you know, didn't like the educational system. You know, my family in general has not been very trusting of the government my whole life. So I didn't necessarily have a tinfoil hat, which I felt like I was kind of robbed of. You know, I was kind of like, well, you know, Mom, Dad, if you could have done anything better, I guess you could have, you know, at least supplied me with a tinfoil hat so that way I could have kept the government out of my head during my childhood. But, you know.
Yeah, I actually learned where the origination of that came from like a couple days ago.
Me too, but yeah, tell it.
Yeah, it was this guy, this Dr. Delgado guy that was putting in chips into animals and monkeys' brains, and they actually did some human experiments and put it into this one guy's brain, and it totally screwed him up. And he was like walking around and like his brain was on fire. He was talking about and put like a metal can over his head, and then to be able to block some of the signals or something from this chip that they put in his brain, and then they wrapped tinfoil around his head or whatever to help him out. So that's where that whole tinfoil hat thing came from. They were actually doing some chip brain experiment stuff with this Delgado guy back in the day.
That's new to me. I didn't actually hear that one. I heard the one I heard was it was a beam that they were working on, like I can't remember if it was like a light or a sound or something, but it would basically work like microwaves and boil the cells in your skin only so deep or whatever, and aluminum foil would deflect it. And so I had thought that was but I didn't know about the chips, which, I mean, you got Elon Musk trying to do that now with animals and some people, which I think might be a positive for, you know, people that no longer have the use of their limbs. But at the same time, I'm going to take a hard pass on any chips. Like, I'm not getting any chips. I don't even want the Frito-Lays. I'm no chips.
Yeah. Well, on that note, if you guys want to wrap it up for tonight, we can wrap it up. and go around the horn and let folks know where people can find you and support your stuff. Logan, you want to go first?
Sure. We might need to start us a 10 full hat podcast so that way we can get all of that out. Talk more about some homesteading topics here. But yeah, I'm on YouTube. If you're following us from my channel, I'm Hideaway Homestead on YouTube. You can also email me at hideawayhomestead@gmail.com. I am on X, but literally just have an account there. So if you want to get in contact with me, best way to do it is YouTube.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, I have an account on X, Soul Survivor 78. You can contact me there, and I'm usually here most Sunday nights, in case my dog doesn't get sprayed by a skunk or something like a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, it's all good.
All right, guys. I'm Greg Dowd. This is the Tinker Tribe channel, and I'll be posting some more stuff on some of the projects we've been working on, including cabin build and some solar install I've been helping out with. So stay tuned for that stuff, and thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you guys next time.
Awesome.